Hello and welcome to HBM's Cryptid-Corner for Wednesday, July 17th, 2024. We have quite a few things to talk about, so let's get started. In July 1969, tales of the Lake Worth monster terrified Fort Worth, Texas. But was it real? Now we're talking 55 years later. This is from columns first published July 26, 2014, June 21st, 2018, October 16th, 2021. You can't keep a good monster down. In July 1969, when the rest of the world was marveling at the moon landing, Fort Worth was fascinated with their own Bigfoot, described as a furry, scaly goat-man creature that attacked cars and terrorized teenagers near its boggy northwest Fort Worth home. On July 10th, 1969, only 10 days before humankind set foot on the moon, we were frightened by the Lake Worth monster. Then he vanished forever into urban legend. And this is the area near Greer Island where the first sighting took place on July 9th, 1969. Now, there were those who said it was a Sasquatch. There were those who said it was more of a goat man type creature. And here's the famous photo of the alleged Lake Worth monster. Interesting photograph. This is Alan Plaster's photograph. Interestingly enough, he later considered it a prank. Fishy man goat terrifies couples parked at Lake Worth. It's an interesting case. You can read all about it in Lyle Blackburn's book, Texas Bigfoot. He may have written about it in Beyond Boggy Creek as well. I know he wrote about it in Texas Bigfoot. I would highly recommend checking that book out, for sure. The Mystery of the Missing Apes Who Came Before Humans. Analysis. The fossil record of our ape ancestors in Africa is almost non-existent for a period of about 8 or 9 million years. This long gap lasted from about 16.5 million to 7 and 9 million years ago, during the Miocene geological epoch. Yet fossil remains in Europe and Asia show an abundance of ape species flourishing and evolving new traits during that gap period for African apes. The unanswered question is, how did the current ape species found in Africa evolve? The ape species now living in Africa are the closest living evolutionary relatives that humans have. For this reason, it is important to know where they came from. Are they the descendants of those apes that migrated to Eurasia during the Miocene and then returned to Africa? Or is the lack of African fossil remains from that period simply a result of local conditions, such as wet acidic soils, that might have destroyed them? Paleoanthropologists have approached the puzzle from different angles. One hypothesis for the missing ape fossil record in Africa is that apes originated in Africa and then migrated to Eurasia in the mid-Miocene, where they evolved the preconditions for evolving into humans. In this scenario, the better adapted ape species that weathered the late Miocene climate change then returned to Africa, where the human lineage then evolved. So, quite interesting that there was a missing record, apparently, of the apes. Makes you wonder, where were they and what were they doing? Were they in Europe? Or were they in Africa all along and somehow they were missed in some fashion? It's a good question. Do paleontologists have the answers? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I'm sure that they will keep looking. That's for certain. Bigfoot terrifies Louisiana teens on camping trip. Authorities in Louisiana responded to a rather weird call over the weekend. This is the weekend about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when a group of teenagers camping in a national forest reported being stalked by a strange creature with glowing eyes, and some have suggested that the animal in question could have been Bigfoot. The odd case came to light on Saturday by way of a Facebook post from the Natchitoches Parish Sheriff's Office. According to the department, some recent high school graduates from the city of Houma were camping in the Kisatchie National Forest when one of the teens heard a growl and saw what appeared to be an animal that had glowing eyes that stood about 5 feet tall. Now, there is a possibility that this could have been individuals panicking and perhaps having Bigfoot on the brain. But then why imagine a creature that's only 5 feet tall? Why not imagine something huge, gigantic, like around 6 or 7 feet, or 8 feet, or 9 feet, or 10 feet? Why imagine something only 5 feet tall? Of course, there's a possibility it could have been a prank, too. Maybe somebody knew where they were going and decided it would be funny to prank them. It's a possibility. Like I said, they could have been freaked out by something. Maybe a bear. Maybe they thought they saw glowing eyes. Who knows with this case? But again, it's still, well, you never know. I think it's a possibility that this is a case of mistaken identity and over-interpreting and panic. That's just how I see it. Now, here's something exciting from the land down under. Spotted-tailed quoll thought extinct in South Australia, caught at Beachport after 130 years. Look at this creature. Something thought extinct. When farmer Pao Ling Sai set a trap to catch the predator that had been killing his chooks, he expected he would catch a feral cat or fox. Instead, he discovered an animal species that last seen in South Australia more than 130 years ago. Mr. Sai, a trout farmer from Beachport on South Australia's southeast coast, was shocked to find a spotted-tailed quoll, the Sirius maculatus, in his trap, also known as a tiger quoll. The species is considered extinct in South Australia and endangered on the mainland, with the closest known populations in southeastern Australia and into Queensland. And this is the farmer in question. Tasmania is home to larger populations of the spotted-tailed quoll. Mr. Sai said when he went to check his trap at the chook yard on Tuesday, he had no idea what the creature was looking back at him. I expected to find a cat, but I found this little animal instead, he told ABC Southeast SA. It was incredible. I had no idea what it was at first. So, a pretty exciting development. And it's not the only supposedly extinct, now found species I'm going to be discussing this week either. There's another story I'm going to be discussing in a bit, so stay tuned for that. Now, here's a good question. Why don't people see the Yeti anymore? But this is from 2015. This is almost 9 years ago. Until recently, it was common for people in Bhutan to share stories of their encounters with the Himalayan Yeti. But with the arrival of modernity, villagers no longer need to climb high into the mountains where they once saw traces of the Yeti, or thought they did, so a legend is slowly fading away. Perched on a mountainside surrounded by dense virgin forests where tigers, snow leopards, and wild boar roam, is the remote village of Chindibji. It's so isolated that up until 7 years ago, before a electric plant was installed bringing electricity to the village, children here would only go to school for half an hour a day because no one could afford to buy kerosene to light the classroom. In the days before electricity, much of the day would be spent searching for firewood to light stoves and walking up into the high pastures to graze their yaks and goats. While out on the slopes, the people of Chindibchi would come across an unusual paw print that struck chill into their hearts. Now notice it says paw print, not footprint, paw print. So are we talking about a bear? I was about 9 years old and had gone high up in the mountains to collect dry leaves for the cattle, says Pam Dorji, a woman in her late 70s with a wrinkled face and a wide smile. That was soon after a heavy snowfall, which lasted for almost 9 nights. The Yeti must have come down trying to escape the snow. I just saw the footprints the Yeti left behind. 60 years later, Pam still remembers the fear that overcame her. I couldn't stay there for a moment, she says. She ran nearly all the way home. Children huddle around a pot-bellied stove, listening intently as Pam tells her story. Outside the large two-story farmhouse, shadows fall across the valley as the evening turns to night. It is a village tradition at this time of day to share tales of the Migwoi, as the Yeti is called here. So, they say they mention a paw print. Is it a bear or is it an actual large hairy hominoid? That's the question you have to ask yourself. I know Peter Byrne a few years ago said that the Yeti had died out, in his opinion, which is an interesting hypothesis. Don't know how true it is, but at least in Bhutan, you don't see the Yeti anymore. What about the rest of the Himalaya? Are there still Yeti being spotted? We really don't hear much about it anymore, do we? So it makes you wonder if Peter Byrne's hypothesis could indeed be correct. And here's the other story I promised when I mentioned that I was talking about two stories this week of something which was presumed extinct. Prehistoric bird thought to be extinct returns to New Zealand wild. And that's the bird in question. In a massive and historic conservation success story, 18 takahe birds have been released into the wilds of a nature preserve on Lake Wakatipu. This is hoped to be followed by 7 more in October and another 10 in the early months of next year as this rediscovered wonder continues its long road into the third separate breeding population in the wild. The automobile was still a novel sight in London when the takahe was declared extinct. This iridescent flightless bird is a symbol of New Zealand's unique prehistoric past, but it evolved on an island without mammals, and with their introduction came what might have been the bird's ultimate demise. However, they were rediscovered after the Second World War, and ever since, conservationists have been taking a proactive approach to ensuring their survival. Eggs located in the wild are taken into care centers to protect them from thieves like stoats, ferrets, and rats. So, a very interesting bird, a very interesting story here. Story of survival. Good on the Takahe. Why Bigfoot is unlikely only if you know what unlikely means. Now, this is from 2013. What we don't know is shaped by what we do. Whatever dark matter is, we will look for it, assuming an accelerating, expanding universe. However, cancer can be truly defeated, we will have to outsmart evolution to do so. And no matter what bizarre creatures are still to be discovered in our densest forests and deepest ocean depths, they are unlikely to ever be Bigfoot, Nessie, or the Chupacabra. We have found monsters before. As biology has gotten better at tracking down the beasts that elude us, unlikely legends are becoming real animals. Just recently, we finally obtained amazing footage of two very mysterious creatures, the giant squid and the oarfish. They didn't appear from nowhere either. Over the years, biologists and fishermen have found traces of their existence, from fins to tentacles to intact bodies. This is how we find rare creatures in huge areas. We follow the evidence. Cryptozoological creatures like Nessie and Bigfoot are both, supposedly, large animals living in large areas, and both have decades of evidence to suggest that we might film one someday. One Bigfoot was filmed, at least. This one, as we did the giant squid. But practicing biologists still consider these mythic animals' existence to be highly unlikely. Why? In science, the kind of evidence matters. All unlikelihoods are not created equal. From obviously point of view. So obviously the author does not believe in Sasquatch. Most likely he thinks this is a hoax. Why else would he make an ignorant comment like, suggest that we might film one someday? Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin did film one, a Sasquatch. You just don't want to take the time to make the steps necessary to prove either it's a hoax or it's real. But this is the kind of ignorance we have to deal with from skeptics. It takes all kinds to make a world, I suppose. Finally, Nessie spotted on side of Texas highway. Sort of. See this? It does look a little bit like Nessie, doesn't it? Motorists cruising down a highway in Texas were forced to steer clear of a curious piece of debris that bears uncanny resemblance to the Loch Ness Monster. The weird object was reportedly showcased in a social media post by the Houston Police Officers Union, wherein they marveled that the famed Scottish cryptid was just spotted in the number one lane of traffic. In response, multiple residents recalled seeing the strange quote-unquote creature on the side of the road during their commute, making the same monstrous comparison. Alas, the oddity was not a lake monster that had made its way onto dry land, but simply a chair that had gotten swept up in Hurricane Beryl and deposited onto the highway. Well, of course, it's obvious it's not Nessie and it's not a lake monster. But the resemblance to Nessie is quite striking, you might say. Which I find fascinating and interesting. But I suppose it must have been a slow news day at coasttocoastam.com. Oh well, try again next time, guys. Oh, there is just one more thing, by the way. The upcoming 2025 Ohio Bigfoot Conference has already had its first speaker announced. It will be none other than Finding Bigfoot's Renee Holland, the resident skeptic of the show. She'll be the first speaker. She's the first speaker announced for the 2025 Ohio Bigfoot Conference. And I'm planning on being there this year. Lord willing, if the creeks don't rise. It should be a fun time. Looking forward to seeing all my friends there. And that's going to do it for this week. I want to thank you very much for tuning in. You guys are the heart of the show. I always say that, but I always mean it. I will continue to do this as long as you guys want me to. And hey, until 2 weeks from now, y'all be good or be good at. This May-HBM's Crypto Corner.